well. So first of all, thank you to everybody in Narrative 4 for agreeing to present your organization today and your story. An organization that's so good at storytelling and using the power of story are going to be telling a little bit about their story to compassionate education so far, or how you will describe it yourselves. So what the best thing to do is for this Irish man to be quiet and let other people to jump in. And maybe Lee, if you want to start us off, and please bring in some of your colleagues at any point. You've said, Lee, that your internet might be a little bit up and down, and mine was telling me earlier on that it was a little up and down as well, but we'll go with it. So if you've just arrived in, I can see some other folks arriving in. You're more than welcome. We're just getting kicked off here, so Jahi, welcome as well. And what we might actually do, Lee, if you don't mind, just before we get started, because we have a small, intimate enough group at the moment, at least those who are live present at the moment, and people, of course, will be watching it from the recording, but we might just get a chance, if those haven't heard who's in the room, you can literally just, if you want to say your name, if there's an organization that you want to share as well, and where in the world are you right now, because we had quite a flavoursome introduction already from folks. So I'm Shane, I'm based in Madrid, and I'm the education coordinator for Charter for Compassion, and I'm really excited actually to hear more about Narrative 4. We've been talking about this for some time. So Merida, you're in my top left-hand corner, so do you want to just say where you are in the world?
Yeah, so I'm Merida McCarthy, program coordinator at Charter for Compassion, and I'm based in Mexico, Monterrey, Mexico.
Thanks, Merida. Todd.
I'm Todd Porter, do work with Narrative 4 and also with the Charter social justice sector, and I'm in Fort Worth, Texas.
Great, nice combination, nice connection. Vicky, you're unmuted. Would you like to share where you are in the world?
Oh, thank you. Can't get my video to work, sorry. I'm in Western Massachusetts. I'm a school committee member, and one of our alternative schools has used Narrative 4 for staff. We'd like to see it used for students.
Brilliant. Thank you, Vicky, and very, very welcome. John, if you have audio, if you wouldn't mind sharing where you are, and you're very welcome. John may not be able to share in terms of audio. I can't see the audio sign coming up here. So at any stage, John, maybe you can put it in the chat even, but you're so welcome. And Donna, please.
Good day. I'm Donna Mills. I work with the women and girls sector, the gender partnerships sector, the RISE sector, and wherever else I pop up on Zoom. And I'm in northern Idaho in the beautiful mountains in the Pacific Northwest.
Thanks a million, Donna. Maru, I know you're not so far away in this moment from Merida. You're going to be doing some hopping around on planes, I hear.
Yes, thank you. I'm Maru Castañeda. I'm Mexico Operation Manager for Narrative 4, and I am in Monterrey, Mexico as well.
Bienvenido. Welcome. Lee, do you want to share where you're at? I know you've just done it to me.
Sure. Lee Keylock, I'm the Director of Global Programs for Narrative 4. I'm actually zooming in from just outside New Haven, Connecticut, but originally from the UK. So nice to meet everyone.
Yeah, nice to meet you too, Lee. And you were back in the north of Ireland last week as well, so lots of traveling happening as well, so it seems. Barbara, welcome. Where are you, Barbara, right now?
Hi, I'm at the very west end of the Great Lakes in Wisconsin, and I work with the arts sector.
Thank you, Barbara. Is it Jahi? And I'm apologizing if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, Jahi. You're welcome.
No, you actually have it correct, which is amazing on the first try. But yes, hello, everybody. I am Jahi Mackey. I am the Southeast Regional Manager for Narrative 4's Deep South region. So Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. And I am based in, currently calling in from Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Brilliant, and you're so welcome to be here. When you were mentioning all these places, I could see Marlon's eyes and the database behind her eyes, trying to calculate how many connections we have to all these places here. So Marlon, where are you in the world?
I am in a small community called Kingston, Washington, very close to the Canadian border.
Great, thanks Marlon. And Marlon's the director of the Charter for Compassion. And I think so far I can just see Steve and then James, if that's okay. So Steve, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Sure. Greetings, everyone. I'm Steve Kramer, and I hail from Seattle, Washington, about maybe 45 miles as the crow flies from where Maryland is. And I'm a co-lead for the environment sector for the charter.
Thanks, Steve. And James, or Seamus, as you might get called sometimes.
Hi everyone, my name is James Lawler and I work for Narrative 4 in Ireland. So looking forward to telling part of our story here this afternoon.
Great. Thanks a million, folks. And if there's anybody else that does join us, we can put in the chat maybe where you are and what's your connection or interest to today's session. And again, thanks. Initially, it was James that I had the contact with who set up this potential meeting today. And I believe Lee is going to start off, and we're just going to see how organically we can share the information, and then we'll have a bit of time, about 20-30 minutes, where we have some interactions as well from any of the participants today. But Lee, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Shane. I'm actually going to share my screen, and so then people, as we talk through some of our work, you'll have some visual images and a little video to cling on to. So give me 1 second here, and I will share away.
Take your time.
Let me get it in present mode. So can you give me a thumbs up, Shane, if you see that, if that comes up?
Perfect. Full screen.
All right, great. So we're very happy to be here. We're happy to do any sort of work that involves that everyone is heading in the right direction, right? To make the world a kinder, more compassionate, empathic place. So we are an organization that is 10 years old this year, actually. So we've sort of grown our wings a little bit. We're still growing them, but we've definitely leapt off the cliff and grown our wings on the way down. So, but we are Narrative 4. We are essentially, I'm also going to show you this little QR code so that if anyone wants to find out more information about us, they can put their phones or their, they have access to this. It'll take you directly to the website, and you can sort of register with us on our new digital platform. And then you have access to all of the resources and the trainings and the sort of videos, etc., that we're going to go over a little bit today. So hopefully we'll spend about 30 minutes or so telling you sort of a little bit about ourselves, and encourage you to sort of reach out and join this sort of mighty network of educators and teachers and change makers. And everyone on the Narrative 4 side that's presenting today is actually either sort of born out of the classroom. We are all worked in K through 12 in some variation. Some of us are still working in the university level, so we come from an education background. But originally, we're an organization that was founded by artists and mostly authors. One very famous author, Colin McCann, was one of the co-founders. He wrote a National Book Award-winning novel called Let the Great World Spin. And I met Colin 10 years ago when I worked as a high school teacher in Newtown in Connecticut. But essentially, there was a team of people that sort of dreamed up this idea to how can story be used as the greatest currency on the planet, right? It's the most democratic thing people can do, is to sort of sit and share stories with one another and sort of build community. It's the quickest distance between two people, right? So our mission suddenly over a couple of years became, this sort of, our North Star was to build a mission to build global community of compassionate youth, because we worked mostly in high schools across the world. And once you build a deep connection between people, you're far more likely to act sort of more compassionately on somebody else's behalf. And we wanted to use story as the vehicle for that. So that was sort of the inception behind Narrative 4. And it grew pretty rapidly, as you can see. We now exist in 4 continents. We're in 16 countries right now, and we're in 36 US states. We have what started as a couple of people dreaming up an idea. We now have a staff of about 38 sort of full-time people. And so you can see, the reason I show this slide is because there's a deep need for people to connect across the globe. There is a real thirst for dismantling some of these, negative and, problematic sort of stories or single narratives that exist about any one people or one person. So we try to, we use story to break down you know, barriers and shatter stereotypes as we go. And all of this is to make the world a sort of more empathic place. So the story exchange, which is sort of our core methodology, and I'll share some, you'll see some of the resources if you hit that QR code at any point. The story exchange is our sort of core methodology. It's our entry point to everything that we do. And, you know, the essential spirit of this is that two people come into a space, they share a story from their life with each other. But then we flip the script a little bit. We ask people that not only are you telling your own story, you actually have to tell you actually have to receive the story of your partner, go back in front of a group of people and tell their story in the first person as if it is your own. So there's this sort of radical empathic shift. There's the distance is absolutely collapsed between two people because you have to sort of take on the story of another. That's sort of the that's really our core methodology, the sort of entry point to all of the work that we do. But I'm going to show you a quick video, and that will sort of showcase a story exchange in action.
Hey, my name's Jose. How's it going? The cops started to search us for drugs and guns.
I come from a very religious background. You know, my parents are Christian.
A girl saying that she liked me.
This whole story exchange phenomenon is about empathy. It's about putting yourself in somebody else's life, their story, their shoes for a minute. And without prejudice, we have to walk in those shoes and try to remain as open-minded as we can.
Me and her were more than just friends.
Everyone in here is courageous to tell a story. Just go around. We don't have to go in any order.
And then lunch comes, and there's a girl in my seat, and she gave me a love letter. All that's in my head is, I'm hungry and I need my seat.
I've always been taught a man was for a woman and a woman was for a man. But when I was around 14 or 15, I started getting feelings for another girl. I finally had to tell my mom that I liked girls. And knowing my mom, she wasn't going to take it well.
I went through the same thing with my mom when I came out to her. She just owned me. She still just owns me too.
You're just not down, not hitting our bottom. You're climbing up. You're becoming a star. Everybody's becoming a star. That's what I see. Everybody's story.
People talk about empathy as this thing that is just this soft skill. There's nothing soft about it. It's really muscular, and it's one of the bravest story exchanges I've ever witnessed.
We've gotten a lot closer with a lot of our classmates, and we talk to each other, and we've been growing since that day.
How for you is that you'll never have to go through that experience ever again, or ever see somebody get hurt like it.
It was the best experience I've ever had.
Hey, my name's.
All right. So that was a story exchange that we have permission to film that was in Massachusetts, in Connecticut. And sorry, let me just see the chat. I just want to make sure. Okay. I want to make sure I'm not muted or anything. So that was a story exchange that we did in Massachusetts, and we run story exchanges in schools all over the country and the world. And then the idea is to build sort of a facilitation base of teachers that want to, you know, get to know their students more deeply, and vice versa, right? The students to get to know the teachers. And as you know, when you have a deep connection to somebody, and you have a sort of a strong relationship with somebody, other things happen as a result, like, sort of academics go up, people are more invested in what they learn. And then there are also, then we connect classrooms around the world together so that you truly have this sort of global classroom, right, of students that can interact with one another and sort of create this curiosity. But we think that stories is the ultimate vehicle for this, because number one, they humanize, right, one another. I think it was James Baldwin, the author, that said it's much harder to hate somebody close up. When you know something very deeply and personal about somebody, you can't create a caricature about them anymore. They're not one-dimensional, right? They become this sort of complex, nuanced individual. So the other thing is that stories is the quickest vehicle to transform perceptions about people, right? It's hard to dismiss somebody when you know something personal about them, or it's hard to have an incomplete narrative about somebody else. They also drive change, because compassion, right? If the ultimate goal is to move from, we try to get stories to connect people and then get people to move from empathy to some sort of action, right? So we want people to act sort of on behalf of one another and act more kindly. And you're going to see some of the civic engagement projects we engage in later. And the other thing we want to teach is that empathy is far from soft. I think I mentioned it in the video. This is a very muscular thing. It's not even though it's considered a soft skill, it requires intention, and it requires practice, and it requires proximity. You have to be in proximity with people to sort of flex this muscle. And it's actually a top leadership skill, right? And inherent in our core methodology is this. Obviously, we want to build empathy between folks across the planet. But there are certain skills that are top leadership skills. If you go to Forbes or any of these, one of the things that they list for any major leader is this ability to have empathy for somebody else, to be able to deep listen, right? And to be trained how to listen to understand, as opposed to listen to react, which many of us sort of do all the time. You have opportunities to perspective take, and that is a huge plus in anything that we do that transcends narrative 4 even, right? It's just one of those skills that, to be able to perspective take, gives you a more nuanced look at the world. And it's also good for communication, right? To be able to tell somebody else's story back with them in the room is a courageous thing, but it's also something that requires, good communication skills and a level of vulnerability. We always say that wherever there's sort of tension, there's potential, right? And to be vulnerable is okay in some of these, classrooms that we work in. So there's a cultivation of courage too that we talk about as groups, like you saw of those students in that video. Now, we're giving you a very expedited version of what we do. There's going to be plenty of time for questions at the end. But the other 4, these are the sort of, this is the skill-based, these are some of the skills that is inherent in this practice, right? That you really want your students to, and not just the students, right? The teachers to sort of understand, right? That we just mentioned: deep listening, curiosity to learn from somebody else's knowledge or experience, right? To imagine what's possible, right? Imagination is paramount. In fact, we were talking before this education forum. James, who you'll hear from in a minute from Ireland, was just in Northern Ireland. It was the 25th anniversary of the peace agreement, Friday Agreement, and Senator George Mitchell, who was paramount in putting that original, in the 90s, original peace process together, just read from his new speech 25 years later, and it's called The Possible, right? And embedded in the word impossible is the word possible, right? So this idea of imagination, to consider possibilities beyond what you could ever think is possible, is really crucial in some of the work and some of the classrooms that we work in. And all of that hopefully leads to some sort of positive action, right? That your words, your actions, your lives matter, right? So I'm going to stop talking just for a minute, and I'm going to pass the microphone to my wonderful colleague, Maru, who's going to tell you a little bit about how some of this work shows up in Mexico.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. And I want to share a little bit what we are doing here in Mexico. We start in 2015, 16, and we start, of course, in the level of high school. I start in a school that they have from K to 12. But we start with high school because we know that young adults, they're our goal, our main goal. But time passed and school, maybe you can change to the next slide. Thank you. So time passed and I realized, and the school realized, that why not, it can be possible to move from K to 12. Why not, we can start with early childhood and we can start moving our program, our story exchanges from the little kids to the adult kids. So in that moment, from now, it was 5 years ago, we introduced the K to 12 program in some schools, and we adapt our programs. We use the time from the library because, you know, kids, they have the library time. So we have a selection of books about empathy, about compassion, about social emotional themes, and we adapt our story exchange in an object exchange maybe, and maybe a photo exchange. Also, if you can see in the middle, they are making some Legos because they share their stories and constructing, you know, the story with Legos. So it's a beautiful experience to work with kids. And from now, 5 years until now, we are growing in that schools from K to 12, and empathy, compassion, all our soft skills, they are moving on, and we have less bullying, more connections. So the program is working pretty well in the schools we are implementing narrative for K to 12. Next one, please. And of course, we don't stay just in K to 12. Here in Mexico, we have a very important university, Tecnológico de Monterrey. So we are implementing one pilot program. This is about civic engagement. So the name of this program is Empathy to Transform, because we are using our tools, the N4 tools, and also the social entrepreneurship tools that have Tecnológico de Monterrey. And we work together, and we're working with some NGOs, and we are changing their environment. We are giving them some tools to move to a new situation, of course, using our methodology, our story exchange, and a lot of tools we have we have now. And if you can log into our website, you can see more of these. So if you can see, Mexico is not just about kinder, it's not about elementary, it's not just middle school or high school, it's also a university level. And this is our second year in this university, and we are growing, and we are having a good impact in our students. Next, please. And also, when some universities, they have some summits, or they have some events that they require this emotional part, they invite us. Last Saturday, I was with Universidad Anáhuac, also it's a very important school in Mexico. It was 105 students that they lived the experience of the story exchange in this beautiful hacienda. I don't know how to say this in English, but it was a beautiful space, and they shared their story. And then, of course, they have several activities, but we introduced this also in different areas for schools, for universities. And if you can see in the right, in the photo from the right side, also that bonfire, it was a powerful day. We have a beautiful moon that day. We have the bonfire, that all the atmosphere was beautiful to share their stories. So students from different parts of Mexico, because in that photo, we have students from all around Mexico as a country. They notice that it doesn't matter where you come. We are humans. We have the same situation, and we are the same. We are connected by the heart, by the compassion. Next one, please. And also for parents, because, you know, every single school, we need to be in touch with parents. So we offer community workshops, of course, and also school for parents workshops with these three main themes about emotions, about stories, about our experience. And we present what we do at Narrative 4. And the second part is like the story exchange, like the main idea or the main tool we have. So we combine, that's why we make this workshop, and parents are involved in the main of the case. So schools, students from schools, they know who we are, teachers as well, and parents as well. Next one, please. And this is one of our last year main goal. It was in Tampico, one of our universities, main universities in Tampico. They host this big event. The community event, the name of this was The Art as the Story of Our Life. We use like different photos from the schools, from students from that school. So we were open to Tampico. We have like 100 person that visit this event. So the first part, it was the story exchange based on the photo gallery. So they move around the campus and they can find their own story in one photo. And then they leave the story exchange. And then we move to a beautiful part of music and literature where students from the same school read pieces of poems, novels, and also play music, dance, and everything. They were connected because you know that our life is a piece of art. So this is one of the most beautiful moments last year, and this year we are thinking in another big event in October, and hopefully Lee is going to be with us. So this is a small piece of what we are doing here in Mexico since 2015 until now.
Thank you, Maru, and thank you, Lee, and thank you all for the invitation to speak to you this afternoon. As Lee was saying, I'm just back from Northern Ireland, and we coordinated a project between young people from Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, and the UK. They were the last couple of weeks, they've been learning about the peace process. They took part in a story exchange, getting to know each other, and also on Monday, which was the official commemoration of the Good Friday Agreement, there was a big conference in Queen's University, Belfast, and was attended by Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Tony Blair was there, Bertie Ahern, former Irish President Mary Robinson, all the architects really of the peace agreement, Mary McAleese, and we distributed, George Mitchell gave the keynote address, and then a speech called The Possible. Can you see that there? So we distributed a couple of thousand of these, not only in Belfast to all the delegates, but also on the streets of Limerick, Dublin, and London, as the speech was being delivered. And I hadn't planned to do this, but I might just read out a couple of lines because I think it sets the tone. 25 years ago, the people of Northern Ireland and their political leaders changed the course of history. It was a day when history opened itself to hope. The people of Northern Ireland supported, worked for, and established a democratic, peaceful process as their preferred form of governance. They overwhelmingly rejected political violence as a way to resolve their differences. On the evening the agreement was reached, I commended the men and women who reached it. I also said that it would take other leaders in the future to safeguard and extend their work. And so it has. I am here among many others to sound that bell one more time. So that, and I suppose like our work really is all about bridging divides, building positive relationships, and kind of reaching across divides. So we were delighted to be asked and to take part in such kind of a historic day for our island. So Narrative for Ireland, established in 2015, we have a staff of 4. We train teachers and youth workers on how to run these programs that build relationships and connection. Next slide there, please. And I suppose sometimes, you know, I often say this to groups, sometimes these divides are obvious, like people from different parts of the country, but sometimes these divides are not obvious at all. And it could just be a group of young people who have sat beside each other for years, and they do the story exchange, and they learn something new about each other. They see each other in new ways. And this was a student here in Limerick, where I'm based, and she said, I learned that everyone is vulnerable at times, and everyone is going through something similar. After going through the N4 program, I'm definitely more open to telling people how I feel. I realize that people are there to get you through hard times and are there to listen to you. Sorry, I have a bit of hay fever today, so my voice is very croaky. So our reach. So as we said, we train teachers and youth workers, and we have a reach of just over 800 teachers in this kind of growing practitioner network and youth workers. And we have a reach. We trained at least one teacher in 35% of post-primary schools. We offer, once you're trained, you're part of the community, you get lesson plans, resources, student resources, etc. One of the initiatives that we run for schools is the Empathy School Award. And there's 3 criteria for awards, and it's schools get the award for training staff, running programs, and getting young people involved. We have a different, so it's usually story exchanges. We have the Narrative 4 walk and talk, where a junior and a senior class get paired and have questions. They ask, it's a facilitated discussion as they walk 4 kilometers, and that we just launched that last year. And last year, 8,000 young people took part in the walk and talk. It was really successful during the COVID lockdowns. A large part of my work, I have a research background, is kind of creating, I suppose, expanding the evidence base. We have a partnership with the School, Child and Youth Mental Health Wellbeing Lab at the University of Limerick. We have a number of studies coming out, but this is one that looked at teachers. It was a study on teachers, and they found that taking part in the training helped their student-teacher relationship. And it also increased the teacher's own empathy skills, because I suppose you need to embody these skills if you're going to teach it. You know, that's we say that when we're facilitating, you know, what you give out, you get back. So that was kind of, that was an interesting impact. And we have a PhD student now working on looking at the intervention and especially at migrants and how it could benefit migrants in the Irish education system.
Alrighty, so hello again. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about our amazing work in the United States. We currently have 6 regions. So we have 2 Northeast regions, one that covers the New England region, the other that covers the Mid-Atlantic states plus Connecticut. We have 2 Southeast regions, which covers the Upper South, as well as my region, which is the Deep South. And then we have a Midwest region and a Pacific Northwest region. And all of our regions have very different things happening. You know, in the Northeast region, where a lot of our strongest and most enduring relationships are, we do a lot of incredible work with schools. And in the Pacific Northwest and in the Deep South, we do a lot of community work as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and guide you all through our work in schools more specifically. Next slide. So within a school, there are many different ways that we engage with folks. First is through getting teachers and administrators to use the story exchange as a tool to build empathy and connection. And oftentimes this is done either between their students or within the faculty within a school or at a university. The story exchange can also be used as a tool to be integrated within your curriculum and your lesson plan. So if you're an English teacher, you can use the story exchange to talk more about a theme in a particular book that you're reading. Or if you're a humanities teacher, you can use the story exchange to have a deeper conversation on empathy with certain cultural groups of people. Of course, we are a youth serving organization, and we're also an organization that is led by youth. So there's an opportunity for students to become facilitators for the story exchange and lead this practice with their students and even their teachers within the school and university. In the past, we've also done the Student Ambassador Program, and this is just to give young people an opportunity to represent Narrative 4 and our values and our mission, not only in their communities and in their schools, but also for Narrative 4 as a global community. There are other opportunities to engage folks beyond just one particular classroom. We've done a lot of whole school engagement as well. One example is very recently, we did a story exchange with High School in the Community in New Haven, Connecticut, and they recently hosted us to do an entire school story exchange, and that included pairing up underclassmen and upperclassmen students with one another. And we've also had opportunities to train an entire school of teachers to become narrative 4 facilitators and to lead story exchanges within their school, or also within their classrooms as well. And in my region specifically, we have intentionally done work to build connections between students and faculty at a particular school. At Baylor University in Waco, Texas, we actually did a teacher-student story exchange where the students shared the stories that their professors told, and the professors told the stories that they heard from their students. Next slide. You know, as a global organization, we are seeking to build connections between students, not only within their community and their school, but also between schools and communities. One of those ways in which we do that is through our inter-school exchange. You can do an inter-school exchange between 2 different parts of the city. So maybe an urban part of the city and a more suburban part of a city. You could do it within a state, so 2 different cities or towns within the same state, or you can even do it between 2 different parts of a country. And this is a great opportunity for students and teachers from different backgrounds to connect with one another. One of the most prominent examples of this work is through our field exchange with Floyd County and University Heights. The Floyd County High School in Langley, Kentucky is currently doing a field exchange with University Heights High School in the Bronx, in very different parts of the country in the United States, but they're both engaging in a field exchange where last fall, students from Kentucky went to the Bronx for about a week, and now students in Kentucky are coming, in the Bronx rather, are coming to Kentucky to experience culture and life in Kentucky and also build connections with students there as well. Next slide, please. And overall, the basis of our work is for there to be a through line from the story exchange to greater community engagement. You know, curiosity from hearing stories and hearing other people's experiences engenders compassion. Compassion is the highest form of empathy, and there's the hope that empathy will lead into action. And so a lot of our work involves getting folks to use this newfound empathy that they may find, or restored empathy that they find through the story exchange, and put that into a community project or some kind of civic engagement project. And that's where our work with our civic engagement initiatives come in. One of those examples is our work with police officers and youth in different parts of the country. In the Bronx, we did a police officer and youth program where students were able to do a story exchange with local police officers as a way to build community and trust, and also to repair some of the divides and issues that may exist between communities of color and police officers in certain cities. And this is also being done at a smaller extent in the Boston area. And another example of our work through civic engagement involves not just the police and youth program, but also environmental projects, activism projects, policy advocacy, or volunteerism. And so a lot of our work in the US and also in the other countries as well is to get folks to see the story exchange as a starting point to being more engaged in the world that they live in, and not just an ending point as well. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lee, who's going to close this out.
Thank you, Jahi. You know, it's not always possible for schools and communities to, you know, to travel, right, and to interact in a physical sense, right? So in order to make it more equitable, and especially during the pandemic, which taught us a lot, we created an entire virtual story exchange program where we link communities together through, you know, through pretty rudimentary means like Zoom, like how we're connecting right now. Zoom, Google Hangouts, whatever social media makes it possible. And we connect students all across the world this way. And the best thing is you only need some of a little bit of the technology to make it happen, but you also need really good teachers, right, on either end of the equation, or two really well-trained students to help facilitate these relationships. And so the virtual story exchange has taken off massively, and it's probably one of the most equitable and fun things you can do in a classroom is to, you know, imagine kids in you know, in the US, connecting with James's kids in Limerick, right? And if you're reading a novel, for example, or listening to a piece of music, that these kids can sort of interact and chat about things and get the perspective from the the place where this music or novel was born, right? So truly a global classroom is created. I know this is a lot of information for people, and it's sort of a very quick snapshot of some of the work that we do. But you have some information here. If you're in the US, on the right-hand side, you can see who to connect with, you know, in your region. If you are not in one of these regions, you can, you know, connect with me, and you can see my email, lee@narrative4.com. And then we have, you know, key personnel some who you met today in the various countries. So, you know, reach out, and if all else fails and you don't remember any of this part, just go to our website, and the info line will definitely, you know, lead you to the right person. But really, I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. There is a 20-second survey. The reason I say this is because any nonprofit, we are trying to gauge audience reaction to our presentations and things like that. We want to be better at the work we do. So if you have an opportunity today or the next couple of days to, you know, take this, and it really is 20 seconds, please, because we need metrics in order to continue to get funding so that we can run these programs in schools and communities, especially the marginalized communities that, you know, don't always have the resources. We can get funding to help them. So I'm going to stop the share right now. And I'm just going to open it up to, you know, Q&A, because I'm sure some of the teachers on this wonderful Zoom have questions, and that's really the best way to get information. But ultimately, our goal is to use story, right? Use narrative as currency, bring people together in the most democratic way we can. You know, since the cave painters started, like, you know, drawing on caves, through to, you know, even Twitter today, right? People are trying to tell their stories in some fashion, some way or another. So it's the ultimate sort of through line between people, and we use that to build community, and then put that community into some sort of civic engagement, positive action. I'll be quiet now, but honestly, you can ask us anything. We can tell you how to get involved, where it shows up, or you can ask us challenging questions, whatever you prefer.
Brilliant. And thank you so much, Lee, and all the presenters in the various different parts of the world and where this incredible work is going on. And so we can open up. We have about 45 minutes, which is great, because you've left the bulk of the time for interaction as well. But just from a very quick observation, I mean, and I don't mean this to be taken the wrong way in any way. I love the fact that it's powerful stuff that's happening, and it's been 10 years of this powerful work, but it seems simple enough to be able to implement it wherever you might be in the world. And I know that you've got huge numbers over those 10 years, and now you've got bases all over the world. And I know Alex is joining us from Uganda at the moment as well. So you have bases in Africa, and I believe in South Africa, in Tanzania, in Nigeria as well. And so the numbers keep on growing as well. But the proof is in the pudding for me, and a very short story, and then hopefully we can open it up for questions and interaction now. But when about 5 or 6 years ago, was a good friend of mine, Rory McKiernan, started telling me about Narrative 4, who came onto my radar, and I was working on a different project at the time. And so through one thing or another, and COVID, I didn't hear much about Narrative 4, even though it was, you know, it was continuing to grow with pace and momentum. And then when I joined the Charter for Compassion, I thought, okay, I'll reach out to James in Limerick and see if we can get connections. And so I came back with this. For me, I was quite excited to bring it to the rest of the team. It's like Narrative 4, it's a perfect fit, like a glove for the Charter for Compassion. And Marlon was sitting there saying, Narrative 4, we know all about Narrative 4, because Colin McCann had already done a global read for the Charter for Compassion. In fact, the following week, he was presenting our former president, at least myself and James, former president, with an award on behalf of the Charter. So you were well known in many circles already. So I was still very excited about making the link, and I am still very excited. And I hope that Marlon might be able to, in a couple of minutes' time, even share practical ways that our organization might be able to link and support your organization. But there's many other hats that people have in the room here. And many other organizations that hopefully we, as a network of networks, can connect and continue that work of narrative 4. But the simple idea is like that walk and talk, the 4K walk and have a conversation. It's brilliantly simple yet really powerful, and so I hope we can continue to spread that. But if I can't see any hands physically up at the moment, or digital hands are not flying up, but if anybody would like to open up the questions, and I definitely would love to hear somebody talk about the facilitator training at some point, and maybe even the advanced training that's on the website. And one quote that jumped out at me, or a statistic or a fact that was jumping out at me from the website the other day when I was looking at it, and it was about the adolescence and loneliness. For some reason, those two, the topic of young people and loneliness, and a statistic about I think it was loneliness in young people has doubled in English-speaking countries specifically. It's increased dramatically all over the world, but for whatever reason, English-speaking countries, adolescent loneliness has doubled over the last few years. So if anybody would like to touch on where that's coming from, but facilitator training, excuse me, advanced training if possible, wherever we might be in the world, and then yeah, that topic of loneliness. But in the meantime, if we can get some questions and comments and conversation, the floor is open.
There is, well, thank you, Shane, for, inviting us and everyone to invite us. A rising tide floats all boats, right? Like there's no ego with any of this work. This work is about doing good stuff. And if we partner with the Chart for Compassion, and, whoever, we want to partner with everyone locally and globally to make this a sort of this empathy and compassion a reality for all communities. So we're happy to be here. One of the questions I saw in the chat box was, where does narrative 4, the name, come from? Now, this is one of those sort of, I can't even say, off the record because it's being recorded, but it depends who you're sitting with and who you're asking in the organization, because there are people that founded the org, but essentially we've sort of landed on this this idea that obviously narrative is at the core, right? That we think stories in any way, shape or form, whether it's through music, through dance, through visual arts, through oral narrative, whatever it is, that narrative is the through line between everybody. So that's the sort of the most, equitable democratic thing, right? That we all have stories to tell. And the 4, even though we can talk about those 4 skills of, curiosity, deep listening, imagination, positive action, those 4 pillars that we work within, that's crucial. But also the initial idea was just simply the 4, or the play on the word 4, was just the idea that we want people to know that your stories, your lives, your voices sort of matter, and your actions, right? They matter in this world. And to be seen is a very powerful thing. To be seen and to be heard is a huge part of the of our work, and that really combats what Shane, you were talking about, the loneliness epidemic, right? And I can talk more about that later, but I'm sure there are hands up and other questions, and
I can see Steve at the hand up, and thanks, Lee, for sharing that.
Yes, so I have 2 questions that are connected. In the Pacific Northwest, do you have any presence in the Seattle area? And so that's my first question. And the second question is, how do you get started with schools? Do you work with like school boards or school district staff, or, how do you get your foot in the door in different schools?
I'm going to pass the mic to Jahi. The short answer to your first question is yes, we are in Seattle, and Ty Schroeder, who was on the last slide, and we can get you this information, is the regional manager for that area. Jahi, I'm going to let you talk about how to get into schools and stuff.
Yeah, so yeah, just to echo what Lee said, Ty Schroeder, she's based in the Seattle area. So it will be really awesome to connect you with her and the incredible work she's doing in the Seattle area. But as far as getting into schools, it really just depends on the region, because a lot of us as regional managers, we're based in the communities that we are seeking to grow narrative 4 in, which means that in every community has a different engagement with schools. So we have to kind of change our engagement based on the regions that we're in. So in certain parts of our region, it's very easy to, have scheduled meeting with a principal or with a teacher and have that direct buy-in from an administration, especially in places where narrative 4 has very strong relationships. But in the Southeast region, it's a bit trickier. You know, there's a lot of different things that we have to overcome. And so a lot of our ways of getting into schools is very grassroots. Like we'll have a direct relationship with the teacher. And being in the South, where everything is about deep relationships and building genuine connections with people, we build a relationship with the teacher and then get a teacher to be a part of the work that we're doing. And then also they're able to loop the principal in, and then we slowly build a relationship within that school by way of that one teacher. Or we may talk to a principal who's really who can be a really strong champion for the work, and then develop a relationship with them to expand the work in the school. So really just depends on the region that you're in, depends on the part of the country that you're in. And it also just depends on, you know, we all as regional managers have different styles of working because many of us have worked in the classroom, and then some of us have been more present in the outer community. And so that's how we do our work.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Jahi, that's great. I just want to add one other thing. That the other way we get into schools is for example, we were just featured on the Today Show, right, which has millions of people watching it, or you can access that video, and they showcased some of our work in the South Bronx, and it was a 4-minute piece. So a lot of times it's just word of mouth, right? People see something, hear something from the Charter for Compassion, right? You heard about us and you've told somebody else about us or whatever. So there's other ways into the classroom, but it all really starts with a relationship, like Jahi was saying. Somebody has a catalyst moment, or an artist event. They saw an artist event where we're mentioned, you know.
Yeah, I certainly see that as a key figure. Donna has a question here, I think, or a comment.
Well, I live next to a stunning lake, and I love the walk and talk idea. And I live in a part of the country that is very hot right now with political discourse. The bumper stickers in this area are so very telling of the challenges of humanity right now. And I will get in touch with your regional Pacific Northwest director, Ty. Maybe Steve, you and I could have a collective chat with her, because as Steve's in the Seattle area, I'm 500 miles east in the Spokane, Coeur d'Alene area of the country. And this has had historical racist troubles in northern Idaho. And I have people asking me all the time, like, what are you doing in Coeur d'Alene? And I'm like, shining. Bringing the light, babe. And there have been numerous opportunities through the charter for endless, no, I wouldn't say endless, but many trainings that we've all been through. And I really find this particular organization like I just want to grasp on, don't let go of my hand for a second, because I think there's a whole lot that you have to share that could be implemented here through the work that I'm doing. So I just embarked on a program in ministry with a non-denominational, I don't care what kind of spiritual being you are. If you're here and you're walking the planet, you're welcome to have a conversation about who are we, what are we, and how's this going to happen now, right? Like post 2020. I love that you said, why stories? Stories transform perceptions. And I'm right now in the middle of conversations. I can't tell you how many experiences I've had where people's perceptions have stopped a conversation, right? In its tracks. Like, for example, right now, I'm not speaking to a lot of beloved people in my life because their perception of a specific thing that happened is not the same as my perspective, and it happened from me and with me, and I can't be me in the middle of their story. So I've paused our interactions right now because I'm not feeling, what I said was I'm not feeling heard, but what I realize is I'm not feeling understood. And so as you said something about something floating all boats. I was reading this morning, Letting Go. It is The Pathway of Surrender by David R. Hawkins, and he wrote Power versus Force. And this whole thing just was talking about how we're all floating right? Like the more surrender, they're using the theory of surrendering to those perceptions I can't change and how that might bring joy. And so there may be a place in our lives for that kind of story. Like, I can't change your story of me. And how do I find peace in the surrender of allowing that? You know, I think that your program is a beautiful opportunity to swerve that misperception, to be able to really create connections of truth instead of perceptions. So anyways, that's a long.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you for sharing. And I see that Alex has put in the chat, and you've also got a contact there, Alex, next door in Tanzania, I believe. Is Bucci based in Tanzania? I'm not sure.
Bucci's in Nigeria, but we do have people in Tanzania. But we have people in all over, actually, in different various countries. I think they're in like 5 countries now, right, James? I can't remember now exactly, but in Africa. But he's the conduit. So if you go to him first, he'll love it. And he just got married actually this week, and he looked phenomenal in his wedding gear. So he might not get back to you for the next week because he's probably on his honeymoon. But otherwise, he'll get back.
We'll give him a bit of grace for celebrations. But to your other comment, Alex, as well, about the power of stories in African culture, and from spending some time in Uganda with you and growing up in Ireland as well, the power of story is just, it's immense. But that story can take so many different forms, and it can be the written, the oral. In Ireland, with James's community in Ireland, and the board even as well. Like there's two column max, I believe, on your board, which is the son of column in Irish. But one is using the written story, and we know that column. But the other column is using music and another way of telling that story. So there's so many different ways to get that story out. But it seems like you're tapping into all the different creative ways that story can be told, which is beautiful, powerful, but it's also very popular, and it gives us a chance to get the word out there as well. So Marlon, your hand is up, please.
My hand is up, and welcome everyone. This is really very exciting. And of course, Colin McCann would be behind something like this, and we're thrilled. I was just wondering in listening to this and thinking, we do so much online. In fact, we do almost, as the charter, the international part of the charter, we do everything online. And I was just wondering if there was an opportunity for Narrative 4 to actually have a training for teachers that are part of the Charter for Compassion. So like you, we're in 54 countries, lots of cities, and we have an education sector. And I'm wondering if we had enough time to promote something like this, how many schools we might be able to get involved in doing this. So that was one thing that I'd like to explore with you. The second thing is that we have a really strong partnership, and it continues to grow with something called Crossing Borders. And you might know it, but we're going to be offering in May specifically for organizations to look at the whole program and then make a decision if you want to have a number of people who would be trained in crossing borders. And it just makes sense to me as I'm looking at everything that you're doing, that you are complementary to one another. Crossing borders is a kind of process, a technique that I think could be definitely available to you. And so I am just going to send the invitation to everyone's name from Narrative 4 that you've put in the chat box so that you can consider it. And then I'm thinking, wow, there's Loving Classroom. Do you know Loving Classroom in Israel and Palestine, and then also in South Africa? I think an introduction and exchange would be really incredible. So I think I'm guessing that what I'm saying is we'd love to work with you and explore all of the possibilities. And I think that Shane and Merida are going to try and share another thing that we have, which is our map of co-creators. But we'll do that more towards the end. But I'm interested in the possibility of training people who are on our database who might be interested.
So thank you, Marilyn, for all of the information you just gave, because yeah, this is about building coalitions, right? And there, like I said, there's no ego with us. We want to work with everybody and likewise, right? So please go ahead and introduce us to anyone, and we'll do the same, you know, once we start building our relationship. This is the beginning of a conversation, in my opinion, right? So the short answer, and then I'm going to hand this to Maru if she doesn't mind, but the short answer to your question about training, yes, we can run any training. It's really easy. We can do it either in person, we can do it virtually, you know, we can do whatever. There's an asynchronous training we have. I'll let Maru talk about how to become a facilitator in a second. So actually, I'll just pass the mic now, and I will be right back in 2 minutes. But yes, we would love to train whoever wants to become a facilitator.
Thank you, Lee. And of course, because we are in different places, we can do it this virtually. I start with Narrative 4 when during pandemic, we make a lot of trainings in a virtual way. And I want to make here a parenthesis because we also made this in Spanish. And this is great because I have the material in Spanish. So you can go to our website and you can log in the QR Lee shared from the beginning. So you can log in and we can set that, or also you can send an email to Lee or whatever the person from Narrative 4 is here, and we can set the time, the hour, and everything, the day, so we can have this virtually. Or if you have, for example, people here in Mexico, I can go in person if you have a group of people, and I can train them in person. And of course, Yahi, in the different regions we have in US or Africa or whatever, we can go also in person. The only thing is to have that group of people, teachers or person, they want to be trained, they want to leave the story exchange, because it's these two parts, the story exchange and to be trained, both, because first you need to leave the story exchange and then you can be trained so you can understand our methodology. But for sure, it can be virtual or it can be in person.
Yeah, let's work on that and we can take it offline. Another opportunity, I think, and Todd, this would be for you, I believe, that the Story Festival that started in Austin that we're part of with Compassionate Texas Group. This would be, I think, a wonderful place when the gathering comes together to introduce Narrative 4 to that group.
I can talk a little bit about that. It's not about that event, but for example, for me, when I have, I'm going to be invited in one conference in the following month. So in that moment, it's a good opportunity to show what we are doing. And then I have people that register in our website, and in that way, I can give that trainings via virtual. So it's a good moment, for sure. That's a good moment to show what we are doing. And just answer one question in the chat about poetry, Barbara. I think so. We use poetry, of course. We in our annual global summits, we have a beautiful moment about poetry, and students there connect, teachers. So we use poetry. I am a literature teacher, Spanish literature teacher, and I use poetry in my class. So of course, literature, poetry, everything is connected with us. And we have a big web of artists, our artist network. So from Narrative 4, so all of this information is in our platform. So please look at it, and we use poetry. The answer is yes. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Maru. Go ahead.
No, please.
I was going to say one of the recent poetry projects we did was with the kids that Jahi mentioned in Kentucky and the South Bronx. So virtually they did a series of story exchanges, and it's sort of based on that Where I'm From premise, you know, the famous Where I'm From poem. And the students wrote their own poetry, but then they had to combine the where I'm froms together and create. So each partner from each place created a joint poem where they wove in, you know, each of the lines of the poem. So it became one poem from two places. Really beautiful. So all of these things we do to just, it's not just about the story itself. It's about how creative you get beyond the story, right? What can you do to sort of showcase? And we have examples of that in our resources. We do tons. We did an Empathy Eats cookbook between students where everyone, you know, shared a menu, shared a favorite recipe with a story attached to it, right? From their family, right? It was really about home and family. And then we created a cookbook between these communities so they all get to cook. And we actually had, well, Maru, why don't you talk about, weren't you part of Empathy Eats with Mexico? Or was that just Kentucky and the Bronx? I can't remember now if you did some of that in this portal.
Yes. Before the COVID situation, in my school, well, not my school, at the American School of Tampico, we have a beautiful place. It was a portal, like an inflatable. How do you say that? So my students, they get in, and we have a big screen, and we can be in touch with students from Kentucky, from the Bronx, and around the world. And we have some kind of dinner or breakfast, and students share their stories. And it was beautiful because it was just like this big little screen. It was a big screen, and they feel that they transport to that space. And also we have I Am a Poem, the one we were talking about. So students from Mexico and also from US, they create their own poem and they read in front each other, but you know, stand up like they were in the class, one in front of the other. And it was amazing. Also, we have, you know, Dia de Muertos, Day of Death, and they have Halloween, the US. So we share our traditions, and all of these, there are stories. So we have for a long time, I think so 2 or 3 years, we have that portal in our school, and it was amazing. But then we have COVID and they need to remove. So yes.
Yeah,
so beautiful and very tactile as well, that you can connect. It doesn't have to be just the story about your home, but you're doing that through something else, which is really powerful to share. Sorry, Lee, and I know that Mary has her hand up as well.
Yeah, I just want to say one other thing. The funniest thing is when these students share the recipes and they get to make each other's recipes, right?
Yeah.
So we had kids ordering, they didn't know where to find plantain or yuca, right? They went onto Amazon to order some of these ingredients, and they got, so it's really a cultural immersion. It's not just it's really about just getting to know each other, right? But sorry, I just wanted to mention that.
It's funny, I'm Merida, you're coming in now, but we did a similar project. I was working and living in Palestine for some time and working with young Palestinian and Israeli students. And when it came to food, it was, you know, we know that the political situation is quite hot there, but it took the temperature a little down, but it was more about a competition of who cooks the best hummus, who makes the best falafels, you know, how is it more nuanced ingredients, but it's a really powerful way of connecting to people's home and without going deep into conflict. It can provide some nourishment as well as the food nourishment. But Merida, sorry, your hand's up for a while there.
Thank you. No, and thank you, Narrative, for everybody. This has been, it's a fascinating project, and as Marilyn mentioned, I can already envision so many places and within Charter for Compassion where this is going to be useful and very helpful too. I can see it not only in schools and for educators, I can see it for communities, for our sectors. So if we learn to tell these stories, to listen to these stories, have creative things like a poetry competition between environment and rise, I don't know, no, there's all sorts of things that are flying through my brain at the moment. But so congratulations, first of all, that's the most important thing. Mexico tech. I didn't know you were already working with the tech. I've been promoting you with somebody I know who is working at a national level, creating one of the programs for social emotional learning to take place within the tech. So they're gathering all sorts of courses and creating a new 4-year course that all students will have to go through.
I'm working in Tec de Monterrey, Campus Puebla, and also Tampico. And I don't have the chance to get here in Monterrey. So if you have that opportunity, I will love to do that.
Yeah,
So we can
Andrea
work
usually
together.
comes, Andrea sometimes comes. She must have had another meeting because she knew about this. And it's a wonderful way. She was asking me what can she do to strengthen her program, and this is one of the ones that I can see very
We
Just
actually had a-
let me let me know who.
happening.
Just let me be in touch with her, and I can
Yeah.
show what I was making with the other text.
Okay, and the
Mary,
other
sorry,
one
Mary,
was,
just jump in
go
on
ahead.
that because Andrea was in touch today, and she is usually here at these like the networking opportunities. But she actually had a meeting planned today with the director of the program and one of our other partners. So they'd be absolutely. It sounds like they're on board for some of these programs. But that's a direct connection in Monterey, and yeah, it's
Yeah.
great to be able to see that.
Yeah, we
happening.
must make that happen. Yeah, and
Thank you.
yeah, and the other thing is the map of co-creators that Marilyn mentioned. And I'm going to share screen here so you see all the wonders that we can do with that. So this is, yeah, map your passion. Here we go. Can you see correctly? Is there nothing in the way?
It's just loading at the moment, but it's about to come up at the moment.
Okay.
And I love the fact that Lee has alluded to it a few times, but taking the ego out, and Marlon talks about this quite a lot. This map can be owned by everybody and anybody. And so you have 532 educational partners. There's no reason why every one of those partners couldn't be on this map, in addition to all the other partners. And just seeing what everybody is doing can be quite inspirational as well.
Mm-hmm. And everybody is welcome to actually just take the URL and put it on your own web pages so that people from your communities can join this map of co-creators. So this is a map where we're trying to gather everybody who's doing some sort of good work around the world in any of the sectors. Some of you, most of you might know that in the Charter for Compassion, we're working with 12 sectors. So it's not only education, we're working with religion, we're working with environment, we're working with healthcare, we're working with government policy making, social justice. So there's all sorts of sectors that we're working with. But the magic about this this map of co-creators is that we're slowly adding people on from all over the world. And these are individual people and organizations that can join by registering themselves here. I was just thinking it would be wonderful if everybody from at least all the trainers from Narrative 4 start adding their pin, so that when I look into Monterey, I will see Maru has Narrative 4 in Monterey or in Puebla or wherever she wants to put her pin, and I can contact them personally. That's one way of using the map. But the map will filter out. So when I want to find somebody who's involved in education, I'll go to the filter and I'll choose whatever. Now I'm going to choose anybody involved in education at all ages. And what it does is it separates those. So now I have everybody that is involved with education and I can communicate with them. So I can select, this person here from Dallas, right? So, and I'll select that person and I'll say, oh, anybody in Texas, let's get everybody in Texas to know about Narrative 4 because I'm interested in doing that. If you notice, as soon as I started selecting people, there's a send invitation come up here and I just have to write my email and send them a message saying, hey, this is happening in your area. I would really like to get to meet you, whatever. They can start communicating and people can find you and you can find others. And we believe that the more people that join this, the map of co-creators, the better, so we can actually start this communication. It's a new app. It's a line of communication for everybody that is interested in anything compassionate, in doing any kindness, any program around the world. So
thank you, Merida. Thanks for sharing.
I did put the link in the chat a bit earlier on, but I really wanted everybody else to see what we were talking about and how we can make use of this map, and you can make it your own yourself.
In addition to what Merida has shared, we also have a very specific one it's called Schools Collaborating for Compassion, and we can share the link with each of you as well. But it's much more related, like school to school. They can communicate. They don't need to go through the Charter for Compassion or even through the Narrative 4. They can go directly to each other, and that's one of the aspirations, to stand back and let the the magic happening, you know, that inspiration from Uganda to Dallas to Dublin and all around the world. It's it is happening, but when people know and find out and have that solidarity, or even questions that, you know, from my experience in this part of the world, how might I be able to adapt it and share it? And the people are very willing to do that. So the more we can populate that, the quicker it will get around. I'm aware that there's about 15 minutes left, and some people have said they have to jump right on the hour or even a little bit before to get flights and the rest of it. But Lee, can I go back to you about on the loneliness? Because I'm on a very selfish level, I'm just curious to hear what maybe the program is you're working with in relation to adolescent loneliness.
Well, I mean, you know, we're an organization that that our methodology is really ties into social emotional learning, right, or mental health in general, right, or well-being. And I know that you know, I've read a lot of studies about the loneliness epidemic recently, and I don't know if you know Vivek Murthy, who was the Surgeon General for the US under Obama, he came out with it. So the Surgeon General is the person that, you know, puts the things on cigarette packets or, you know, like seatbelts in cars. You know, it's the person that sort of stamps these things and says we need to declare things as sort of health emergency or whatever it is, right? Or preventative health. And when he took the appointment, he went around the country for the first year. He actually went around the country and he went on a listening tour. He called it the listening tour. He has a book called Together, actually, if you want to read it. It's a really good book. And he said that at the root of all health issues in America, just physical health issues, right, most of the time was this idea of loneliness. He said that is at the core of so many issues of you know, of health issues in the US. Some song about the US. So he brought out this book and he said, but you can't really, you can't just say, oh, the new health standard is to forego loneliness. We're going to fix that. But that was when he said he was leaving his post, that was the thing he's going to focus on the most, is how do you, and the big thing is really, how do you keep people, not just, you have to keep people in community with one another, because so many of the mental health issues, right, or, you know, and then that ties to obviously suicide rates and sometimes, you know, obesity, all of these other things, or drug use or whatever it is, right, that so much of that is decreased if people are in community or in service with other people to one another. So he talks a lot about that in the book, and then he shows models from around the world. But I know that in the studies, we have all of these metrics that we use in schools, and there's actually an empathy scale that you can use, which again, most of these resources are through the website, or you have access to them once you register. But the you know, you should hear from the students themselves. We have metrics to show that you know, loneliness decreases, you know, connection becomes paramount, that students all of a sudden feel valued once their voices are heard and stories are heard. So look, we don't have the data on what that offsets in a person, but we know for a fact that the empathy scales that we've researched, you know, are crucial to the mental well-being of both students and teachers, not just the students, it's the whole schools that we work in. And we did a study with the Center for Emotional Intelligence at Yale University. Mark Brackett, he runs this program called Ruler, which is an emotional intelligence sort of program, K through 12. They did a study with us, and I can share, it's a very quick study. I'll share all of this with you afterwards, and you can send it out to you know, they measured the emotions of students, and there was a couple of 100,000 students represented, every single demographic, every single socioeconomic, sexual identity, you name it, right? Racial sort of, you know, identification, etc. And they asked the students basically two questions, right? How do you feel in school? And how do you want to feel in school, right? And the gulf between those two questions was massive. And so many of the emotions that came back, about 80% of the students came back with these negative emotions, right? They listed them all. Loneliness was at the top. They don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, they feel disconnected. And this was at the high school level. Sorry, this was high school. And they tagged the narrative for kids who had been through story exchanges. And we fell far below the national average for negative emotions, way above for positive emotions. And that was only one quick flashpoint sort of study. So, you know, this idea of empathy and connection is not to be taken lightly, right? This is at the core of our humanity and well-being. So, and all of these other issues that stem from loneliness can be, you know, at least we can offer some salve for that, you know. So I can share some of these studies with you.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for touching on that, Lee. I see Donna with her hand up. If Donna wants to come in.
Thank you. So I recently watched a program on PBS called Hiding in Plain Sight. And it was, the subject was students and mental health or lack thereof. And the one thing I heard from every single one of them was that no one wants to talk about this. And nobody wants to talk about the trauma that we have all been exposed to, not just in the last 3 years, but in a system of domination, in decades and decades and decades and decades of domination, in a system that is not just. And so I'm wondering, I saw in the videos the tissue box being passed around during the conversations, and I'm wondering how much of this that you're seeing is these children finally being able to have somebody listen to their stories of trauma, because I have experienced the same thing as an adult. And I'm looking at your programs like, okay, how do I talk to the adults? Because the kids, they're going to be okay. They're going to find programs like this, and they are going to make their way through a system that is not serving them right now. And the adults are the ones I wish to connect with to make it easier for the students to have less of a barrier to find themselves in and through. And so I don't know if there's a question in there, but how much, I guess the question is, how much are you seeing your work address and also, for lack of a better word, help these kids that are not being heard?
I mean, I can start and then feel free N4 crew to hop in. But I know that, you know, when we're 10 years old now, right? When we first started, we didn't want to, you know, moonlight as this organization that said we're conflict management, we conflict resolution, you know, therapists, but so much of the work we do borders in that territory, right? And so a lot of our training over the last 10 years, the first 2 years was just sort of, we were like hopping into places, and who knows, maybe I'm going to be honest, you know, like we only had a sort of 2-page best practice thing at the time, and maybe we open more wounds than we close sometimes, right? But now 10 years down the line, we have a lot of our training is turned over to sort of trauma, you know, trauma informed sort of facilitation and safety and consent tools. How do you create the braver space for these stories to take place, and what are some of the you know, steps, right, that you take if some of these stories come up, right, in a space. So we don't just go into any community. That's a very long-winded way. We don't go into any community and be all flippant and say, we're just going to tell any story and pass one box of tissues around, right? We actually, the facilitators that we train, we talk to them about this. It really boils down to the individual in front of the participants. How well can you hold that space? How well can you, and we work locally with people in there. So we don't come in as just some outsider group and think we have the answers. We work very closely with people who already have the trust of the people in that space. But I'll be quiet in case some of the others want to hop in and add to that.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, Jahi, you go ahead, please.
Yeah, I guess, Donna, to your point, I think in my region, because I can't speak for the other regions or countries represented, but for my particular region, you know, what I've often found is that the young people are very open to narrative 4 and the story exchange. They see being able to be heard, but some adults are not. And I think that a lot of that is because of the fact that, you know, as adults, as grown folks, we are often living in a world where our vulnerability is seen as weakness, and it's also seen as a liability. And so when you're asking people to share stories and express themselves and to share even a happy moment about themselves, there always is this feeling of, you know, do I want to do this with a stranger? Do I want to do this with somebody I don't know? I don't want to say the wrong thing in front of my boss or in front of someone who, you know, plays a role in my life. And so a lot of the work in our region is working with adults as well as young people and getting them through a story exchange. So oftentimes we may have, if it's a youth serving organization, we may do a story exchange with the adult staff. And then one of the things that I always ask and, you know, talk to the adult folks about is, you know, you can't expect young people to do something that you are not willing to do. That's not always fair. You're asking young people to be vulnerable and being open, and yet you're also not allowing yourself to be in that as well. That being said, being vulnerable is very risky and vulnerability is relative. So what may be deep and heavy for one person could be light work for another person. So we're always trying to create spaces where people feel as though every part of their life and every part of their lived experience has value. And so one of the things that we always say is every story has power. So even if you're sharing a story that is light and, you know, laid back and doesn't have a lot of trauma or pain into that, you know, we always say that every story has value because every story allows you to share a different element inside of yourself. And that vulnerability is a strength, and it can really help to break barriers and to illuminate your life as well. So it is a lot of work. So, and there is an intergenerational part of the work we do in our region. And I can imagine in Ireland, Mexico, and other parts represented, it's the same way.
Thank you, Jahi, and see you soon, hopefully. Hasta pronto, Maru. Good luck with your traveling.
Safe travels,
Thank you for
Maru.
being here.
Thanks, Maru.
We're sort of coming towards, sorry, Lee, if you wanted to come in on that point.
I just want to say one thing, you know, about this trauma. If anyone knows anything about my sort of history or my catalyst moment into thinking about this work, I worked in Newtown in Connecticut. I worked in the high school, which is up the street from Sandy Hook, where we had a mass shooting in our school system, right? 26 people killed in 4 minutes. And so this work, I never approached this work lightly. And I've always thought about how do we keep kids connected so that they cannot do some of the things that have happened in this spree of mass shootings right across the US. And how do we build relationships intentionally so that these things can't happen, or at least we can offset some of it, right? So a lot of the trauma-informed work that I've done and that we've tried this in the most traumatized community. We've worked in Newtown. We still work there. And so we think a lot about that, and a lot of our practices help people get beyond that. So I do think we have some, you know, some data to support what it is that we do and how it can help. We don't just run into spaces and say, we're going to do this just to offset any, because I can hear teachers' minds spinning, right? And I know that they're like, well, what if this comes up? What if that happens? So you know, reach out to us and we'll share all of our resources with you.
Yeah, brilliant. And like you said, Lee, this is it's a starting point for many of us and a touch point, but hopefully we can take the resources, we can take the energy and the experiences that you've all had and people coming to Narrative 4 for the first time. But I certainly shared personal bias and pride listening and hearing the Irish connection as well from Coleman to all the team, back to James as well, but hearing about it even in the Irish media, the work that's going on, thinking outside of the box and doing the simple things but doing them really well. It's been lovely to hear that story today, and hopefully we can continue the collaboration that and sharing that energy, because it is powerful. And thank you for those who are sharing in the chat. There's lots of affirmations and aspirations being shared about how this could be worked into other programs. Steve has put up the facilitator link as well there, and on the website, of course, you can look at how the advanced training can take place. But just from talking to James as well in the past, it's clear to me that you bring in facilitators that are experienced as well, that have the experience, and then adding this program to their profile as well. So it allows that experience in the room. But muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much to everybody from Narrative 4 for coming in, but also our own participants and our team from different parts of the world. Gorav Mila Maigut, as we say in Ireland, and I really am excited to see where it can go from here. So whether you contact us as a team or you contact Narrative 4, let's stay in touch. Let's keep on having these conversations and crossing borders, I heard mentioned that possibility of maybe bringing all these conversations together, even in a more formal way. But yeah, joining the map, we can share the schools collaborating for compassion and the co-creators map with you, and our folks know all about that map as well. But thank you very much.
And
Any last
Lee, if
closing
you can
comments?
share the
Marina?
QR with me, Lee, share maybe 1 or 2 QRs, and I'll send them to the people that registered to this event. Mhm.
Yeah, I'll send. I mean, you should be able to just pull it right off I can share the slide deck with you too. I mean, it's on here, but I can share that with you too if you want.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Marilyn, any last words? Or are we going? Thank you. It's
Thank
lovely.
you.
Thanks, everyone. It was
Thank
nice.
you very much.
All right.
Thank you.